This is CBC Vancouver News.
Tonight on CBC Vancouver News, a Friday night decision, the BC port strike ends as workers vote to accept the new deal. And
this is our busiest long weekend of the season, so we are at peak travel.
Another summer-long weekend of travel, weather on the water, in the sky, and on the road. Warnings to prepare ahead. Also,
all we can do is try to slow the rate at which we deplete the reservoirs. So any kind of restrictions is going to help with that.
Taking on the drought that plagues the province, BC triggers new restrictions in a heightened bid to conserve water. Good evening, I'm Zahra Premji. Thanks for joining us. Dan is away tonight. We begin with the lengthy BC port strike, which has come to an end. This comes after weeks of labor disruptions that paralyzed supply chains across Canada. Tonight, the vast majority of workers voted to accept a new 4-year contract. The CBC's Moira Whiten joins me to break this all down. Now, Moira, is the strike actually over?
Zahra, both the Port Workers Union and their employers have now ratified the new contract. So yes, this is the end for the next 4 years, it seems. Nearly 75% of members of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union of Canada voted in support. Now, we don't know the details of the agreement yet, but the BC Maritime Employers Association says it means higher wages and better benefits for workers, and that it will ensure labor stability at BC's ports for years to come.
All right, so what did it take to get an agreement after all these weeks, and really, what comes next?
The journey to this deal has been tumultuous, to say the least. Negotiations began in February but broke down in May, and in June, virtually every worker voted to strike if needed. That initial strike shut down all 30 port terminals in BC for 13 days last month. 2 tentative deals were rejected, one by union leaders and a second by the union's membership in a vote last Friday. Union leaders said while wage increases were good, the deals didn't do enough to regulate automation at BC's ports. The parties reached this third deal only after Canada's Labour Minister ordered the Canada Industrial Relations Board to help mediate and impose an agreement if negotiations failed. The labour dispute had profound repercussions for workers and cost an estimated $10.7 billion in trade alone. Organizations impacted say Ottawa needs to have more powers to order workers back to work, and raised concerns this had damaged Canada's reputation as a reliable trading partner. Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan says he's ordered a review of how the dispute was handled. Zahra?
That's the CBC's Moira Whiten. Thank you. Well, it's BC Day-long weekend, and that means prepare ahead before you travel. The mass exodus on the highways, long lines at the airport, and jam-packed ferries are among the things to prepare for. Our Yasmin Gandam is finding out what to expect for travelers by air, land, and sea in the coming days.
So far, so good at the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal. After weeks of infuriating delays, cancellations, and technical difficulties, nerves were running high as passengers started lining up for long weekend sailings.
We know that there have been some frustrating moments for our customers over the past long weekends with the Coastal Celebration being out of service. She is back now and running this long weekend, and I think you're seeing that reflected in the fact that there are very few, well, we haven't seen any sailing waits except for today, that one sailing wait to Nanaimo.
I'll be waiting for you in arrivals.
The company is confident it will be smooth sailing throughout the weekend, but passengers are urged to make a reservation to make sure they can get on board when they need to.
You can still check current conditions to see if there are some spaces available. They're very limited.
At YVR, it's also business as usual. The airport is experiencing lower air traffic than last year. Still, planning ahead wouldn't hurt.
We do ask that people just be ready, be prepared, bring some patience. It will be a bit busy, but at this point, we have no reason to anticipate anything out of the ordinary.
On the roads, it's one of the busiest travel weekends of the year. With more traffic comes more risk. BC Highway Patrol says they'll have more officers out this weekend.
Obey the speed limits, wear your seatbelts, and that's very important. Seatbelts save lives. Drive sober and drive distraction-free. That's another very important one. Can't stress that enough. Have a plan. If you're driving with a friend, have a designated texter.
He says drivers should expect volume delays on the Coquihalla Highway and other major routes. And on roadways with changeable speed limits, travelers should be prepared for slowdowns.
Please prepare for boarding.
The overall advice this long weekend, plan ahead, no matter by car, plane, or boat. Yasmin Gantam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Telecom giant Telus says it's looking to shed 6,000 jobs. The company says it needs to free up cash flow to remain competitive. Profits are said to be down 61% from this time last year, although they still raked in almost $200 million. The cuts don't sit well with the union representing some Telus workers.
So I guess really what it is about making sure the few at the top of the Telus hierarchy continue to reap crazy salaries, and even more so, extreme bonuses on the backs of their workers.
It's not clear where geographically or in which departments the jobs will be cut from, but at least one telecom analyst believes tech support jobs could be on the chopping block.
They're looking at how new technologies and AI in particular can make the customer self-support system a better experience. But are customers really looking for that? No. I mean, if I'm phoning up, if I got a problem, I'd like to speak to somebody that can hear what I've got as an issue.
The cuts involve 4,000 jobs at its main business and 2,000 at Telus International, an arm with offices around the globe. In a statement, the CEO of Telus says the cuts are being made with a, quote, heavy heart. He, according to a corporate filing, was paid $16 million last year. Downtown Vancouver is the backdrop of another homicide. It happened overnight. Police say there was a confrontation on Granville and Smythe around 3:30 this morning. A 32-year-old man was allegedly stabbed and later died in hospital. No arrests have been made. Well, this hot, dry, sunny stretch of weather is on the horizon for the foreseeable future. In Vancouver, Stage 2 water restrictions kicked in today. Lower than normal rainfall has led to drought conditions. As Renee Filipponi reports, it's a crisis that could stretch on for months.
So Program B right now is running.
Students working for the City of Vancouver check on sprinkler systems, making sure lawns won't be watered and that trees and shrubs only get water for short periods of time in the morning.
Outdoor water use is the biggest jump in water use in the dry season, and irrigation systems, often people set them and forget them.
The city is urging people to accept their brown lawns or risk a $500 fine.
We also have an enforcement program where we have 3 bylaw officers who are actively patrolling 7-day-a-week shifts.
23 of 34 water basins in BC are in a level 4 or 5 drought, and the situation is getting worse. The reservoirs that feed Metro Vancouver are in normal range right now, but water use has been up 20% this year because it's been so hot.
We're looking forward to make sure that we don't run into some kind of a hazard where we simply don't have enough water for the drinking, the cooking, and the cleaning.
Streams are dry, just like our forests.
This expert says it's possible more restrictions could be needed down the road if people don't conserve.
We really do need to slow the rate of depletion of the reservoirs, and the only way we can really do that is to do things individually, like perhaps shorter showers, don't flush the toilet as often.
This fair celebrates agriculture in BC, an industry suffering right now.
Climate change seems to be a very, very real thing.
This dairy farmer says irrigation is helping them have enough food for their herd right now, but she's worried about what's to come.
Feed shortage is going to become an issue, which of course drives our costs up, which in turn will drive the price of our milk products up.
And with no rain in the forecast, new restrictions will be in place for some time. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, let's take a closer look at how this is unfolding in Metro Vancouver. Stage 2 watering restrictions are in effect and are dependent on each municipality, which also sets its own fines. Under Stage 2, residents are not allowed to water their lawn or top up any water features. Spray parks will not run automatically, only if they are user activated. Sprinklers can be used to water trees, shrubs, and flowers during specific hours in the morning. These restrictions are expected to stay in place until mid-October. Well, evacuation orders are still in place for areas around the destructive Downton Lake fire. It continues to burn at the edge of Gun Lake, which is about a 2-hour drive northeast of Whistler. The flames now cover 21 square kilometers. Roughly half a dozen properties have been destroyed so far this week. The fire is still considered out of control. North of Kamloops, another 100 properties have been put on alert because of the Adams Lake wildfire. Overall, there are 354 active wildfires burning in BC, 19 of them considered of note. Well, after 2 weeks and more than 100,000 votes, British Columbians have made their choice. Sproat Lake is officially the best lake in the province. It's on Vancouver Island next to Port Alberni. It has won the search for BC's best lake, defeating 47 others to be crowned the champion. Our Justin McElroy takes us there.
What makes a body of water the best lake in British Columbia?
It's just so beautiful around there. There's so many different areas to explore. And
it's so pretty.
The water, it's fresh and clean. You can swim in it, you can drink it.
It is undoubtedly BC's best lake. I've been to all the different lakes.
But only one lake can be best in British Columbia, and its name is Sproat. So, why this lake? Well, you can mention the beaches or the boats, the coves or the cottages. There's just a lot for everyone to do. But this is democracy. The title of best lake goes to those who show up and vote. And the people in the Alberni Valley did just that.
Say the vast majority of people who live out here have lived out here their whole lives. We're not millionaires, but just working people who had the opportunity to enjoy it. And a lot of cabins as well, where people just passed down generation to generation.
And while you may have never been to Sproat, chances are you've heard about it.
Huge orange flying boat rises off the lake, 1,000-year-old petroglyphs doing a double take, pointing the finger at eternity.
The famed Martin Mars water bombers in Coburn's iconic song, but also these petroglyphs, evidence of the thriving life here for centuries.
To the Nuu-chah-nulth people, the lake is known as Klikut, and it has been in the lands of the Hupetchisitt and the Tshot First Nations since time immemorial. Klikut was important as a space for the cleansing of individuals, as well as being a vital place for meeting, as well as being a source of water for animals and the people here.
And it will keep so for a community that's proud of their lake, but also a little protective.
The community really has rallied around this competition, and at the same time, we've seen a lot of people say, like, no, don't tell everyone about Sproat Lake. We don't want everyone knowing about it, but the reality is there's so much privacy on this lake still. There's so many arms that you can go to. There's so many areas you can go to where you just won't see other people, and don't think that'll ever change.
And if being called the best lake in BC does change Sproat a little, well, I've already faced my punishment. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Sproat Lake.
Well, in celebration of this lake and the region, let's take a deeper look at the people who have called the area home for generations. As we heard in Justin's reporting, they have a different name for this body of water. Wamish Hamilton tells us more about the place known as Klikut.
Before it was Sproat Lake, it was and it still is known to Indigenous people as Klikut, or long flat area. Port Alberni is home to two First Nations, the Hupetchisitt and the Tshot First Nations. I'm a member of the Hupetchisitt First Nation, and I have family in the Tshot First Nation. Brandy Lauder is the Hupetchisitt Chief Counselor.
There's great beaches, parks, easy access. You can rent houseboats, there's campsites. It is the most popular. So we're not surprised. We lived here for thousands of years and enjoyed it ever since.
Klikut was also the name of a First Nation. The people still live here, and they are one of three separate nations that make up the Hupetchisitt. For the Klikut, the lake was part of its traditional landholdings.
At one time, we had a war with a neighboring nation on the east coast of the island, and in many, many years of war with them, they sent warriors down and killed off a lot of our women and children. Our numbers as the three nations that were here originally started to die down because of this war, and we banded together.
Sproat Lake was always part of Klikut territory, and it was part of some big events, the most significant of which was a natural one. An ancient petroglyph is etched into this rock face. It tells the story of a great tsunami that hit the area. What the tsunami is said to have washed up became a legend that has been handed down through oral history.
It does refer to a tsunami that happened in the 1700s. It was very large, and a killer whale got trapped in Sproat Lake. When the whale was finally killed, the Klikut people dragged it on shore, cut open the belly, and saw all these different creatures. They got so used to living in fresh water, to see this killer whale get trapped there was a sight.
Visitors will no doubt flock to see BC's newest best lake. They'll take in the beauty, the boating, and other features. But Klikut and its petroglyph will remain a place of history and mystery to local First Nations. Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
And we bring you breaking news from just moments ago. An evacuation order has been issued by Lytton First Nation for Yawaka 11, Sukan 12, and Cameron Bar 13. The evacuation order is for those reserves, and we're just getting this information right now that your evacuation route is north to Lillooet on the West Side Road or south to Lytton via the Reaction Ferry. We will have more information updated on our website, cbc.ca/BC.
The sidewalks were too narrow, or there wasn't transit, or there was mobility issues.
This year's Pride Parade returns with a new and longer route, as well as accessibility for all. We will have the details coming up after a quick break. Stay right there. Thanks for sticking with us during our commercial-free live stream. Neighbors in a northern Alberta community are debating a proposed wind power project. 27 wind turbines are being proposed in the municipal district of Smoky River. The CBC's Luke Ettinger spoke to two people on both sides of the issue.
Not this quarter, but the next quarter of land over there, and then kind of in a row all along the bottom of the draw there. My name's Scott Ritchie. We found this beautiful little 20 acres here, halfway between McLennan and Nampa, and bought it last spring. In February of this year, we had just received an information package in the mail from ABO Wind advising of this planned project in the area. That was the first that we had heard about it. We'd actually lived around oil and gas all of our lives, in a lot of our, in Saskatchewan and northern Alberta here, and we didn't have any issues with it there, so it wasn't really a concern for us in that regard. With this, it was new, so it was something we were really looking into and investigating with the wind turbines, and just the proximity to our home, and you know, they were going to be within a kilometer, some of them, and just we were literally surrounded by them. It wasn't just one out in the field; they were going to be all around us.
So we will see the turbines in what is right now our view of fields, and I am perfectly fine with that. I think they look cool. I'm Susan Thompson, and I live on an acreage between Nampa and Falher. Even though I'm not a farmer, I love the lifestyle. I love seeing harvest every year. I love, you know, that small community where you know your neighbors and you help each other out. It's usually pretty windy. I can see why they're doing it here. I found out because people were against it, to be honest. So, and to me, this is an excellent project for the region because we need development. I find it extremely hypocritical. We have had endless oil development in this area. I didn't hear a peep when new tank farms were put in. Tanks upon tanks upon tanks. When new pump jacks were put in, when new wells were put in.
Robert Brochu with the Reeve with the MD of Smoky River. It's new and there needs to be a lot of regulations put in place. I would like to see the government sooner than later make those kind of decisions. It's unfortunate the way the process is in Alberta right now, and I really wholeheartedly hope it changes in the next little while to a better process so that things that divide the community don't happen. It's unnecessary in my opinion. And as it is, we may have a little bit of say in setbacks and in obviously in road use agreements and things like that, but I really wish the process was different.
We had proposed to the municipal district, the Smoky River, was to amend the land use bylaw around large wind turbines to increase the setbacks from residences for the turbines. So at the moment, it's worded in the bylaw to be at least 800 meters from a residence. We asked for that to be amended to at least 2,000 meters.
I'd love to see the same for oil sites. If they get that through, let's do the same for oil sites. I just sincerely hope that all of this doesn't scare the company away. That's all. I just think that would be a huge missed opportunity for all of us.
This year's Vancouver Pride Parade is working to be more inclusive than ever by moving out of the West End. As Evacuation shows us, it's intended to welcome more people to take part.
And he watched when we walked in 2019, and that was rough. That was a hard route.
Every year, thousands of people have marched through Vancouver's West End neighborhood to celebrate Pride. It's loud, crowded, and too steep for some people.
We have a lot of members who have never been to Pride because of the barriers that were there.
They can't access us because the sidewalks were too narrow, or there wasn't transit, or there was mobility issues.
This year, the parade route will be a bit longer than before, beginning in the West End, winding along Beach Avenue and then Pacific Street. But it will also be flatter and wider and easier for more people to navigate. It's also close to 3 SkyTrain stations.
We already heard from members who say that they're really excited for the first time ever to be able to participate in the parade and in the festival. So
McCain is this year's Grand Marshal and has long been advocating for Vancouver Pride to be more accessible.
It's really nice to be a Grand Marshal that has a disability, that has a visible disability, that people know are neurodivergent so that they can see that representation.
Vancouver's Pride Parade and Festival has for years been hosted in the West End, historically known as Vancouver's Gay Village. Advocates say expanding out of the neighborhood will include more people.
That area is traditionally very cisgender, very white, very gay, male, where I'm a part of the queer community, which is completely different from the gay community.
Our hope over the next number of years is that Vancouver Pride, A, represents everybody, and B, is not just located downtown.
The Vancouver Pride Festival is happening this weekend. The parade will take place Sunday. Evacuation, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here is a live shot of the Port of Vancouver. Darius will have your full forecast next.
It was the tobacco industry that was in the NDP government of the day's crosshairs in the late 1990s.
The government takes in taxes, there's no question about that, as we take in taxes on any other product. But we also spend almost $500 million a year in health costs, which we certainly don't spend on other products that are sold in British Columbia.
The province took 13 cigarette companies to court.
This is about recovering healthcare costs and damages to British Columbians.
The lawsuit was thrown out after the companies challenged it on constitutional grounds. The province amended its legislation and resumed the battle for billions of dollars in compensation. Ujjal Dosanjh was BC's premier.
There was absolutely clear evidence of their misrepresentation, their misleading or their lies about the consequences of the use of their products.
Now retired, Dosanjh says BC's case was modeled on similar lawsuits launched and won in the United States. But tobacco companies here put every possible obstacle in the way.
They argued, well, it was a legal product. Well, just because we give you the right to legally sell a product doesn't mean that you have the right to lie about it. That was our case.
The tobacco lawsuit still hasn't gone to trial, and now there's another similar case.
We do understand that these types of claims are defended often aggressively by the firms that are targeted, but that is no reason for us not to pursue cases where we believe that people have taken actions or failed to take actions in a way that harmed British Columbians. Simply because it may take a while for us to see some results from this doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it.
After 20 years in the works, Desange doesn't think the tobacco case is dead. In fact, he believes BC will see money.
If the tobacco companies thought there was no action to be had, they would have argued that the province has no cause of action and it would have been dismissed out of hand. It hasn't been.
So it's already been 20 years. When will this happen?
Oh, that justice grinds slowly, right?
BC was the first province to sue the tobacco companies, but all of the other provinces followed its lead. Collectively, they're seeking $120 billion. New Brunswick is scheduled to go to trial soon, but BC's case is still in the discovery phase, and that's scheduled to continue well into next year. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC Vancouver is proud to be the exclusive media partner of the 8th Annual Monsoon Festival of the Performing Arts, celebrating South Asian art, music, dance, workshops, and performances. For tickets, visit monsoonartsfest.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Okay, we all love this sun, I'm sure, and maybe even the heat, but I need a little bit of rain, so let's bring in our science and climate specialist, Darius Madavi. Darius, can I have some rain, please?
I think I can do that if you can wait till next week. In the meantime, we can see that because we haven't had rain through much of the province over the last couple days because of that ridge of high pressure moving in, we have had the fire danger get worse since yesterday. You can see just a couple days of not having rain in the central interior has brought that fire danger up. Not too much, but it's just a really good indication of how bad the drought is, that just having a couple days of dry weather can let the fire danger shoot back up really quickly. Now, if we have a look at the weather systems through the province, that ridge of high pressure still dominating through most of the province, which is why we're only seeing some isolated lightning strikes in the northeast. Very little precipitation coming with it. For the most part, just that instability driving that lightning. Meanwhile, remember this low that we've been tracking? You've been wondering why I've been keeping it on the map all this time when we never talk about it? Well, that's what's going to bring us some rain next week, as well as a low system that you can see, just barely see in the United States right now. That's going to be moving up towards the province. What does that mean? Well, over the next 5 days or so, usually I wouldn't push the models this far out, but because it's a long weekend, I'm going to say tomorrow, a bit of rain just for the Kootenays. By the time Sunday rolls around, it spreads to more of the southern interior and up the coast. Probably not hitting Vancouver, though. Monday, our first chance of rain here in Vancouver. You can see it's really spread through the province. That lingering high, keeping a bit of the central interior dry, but for the most part, it's going to be a rainy week next week for most of the province. Tuesday, some more rain in Vancouver, more than likely. And then Wednesday, possible as well. This is where we're pushing the models quite far out, so they disagree a lot at this point. Across the province, you can see that trend tomorrow. Lots of sun, did a little bit of rain in the northeast. And in Vancouver, you can see a bit of sun through the weekend. And then next week, we get some rain.
All right. Thank you, Darius. It does look like a little bit of what I like in the
just for you.
Thank you. Well, that's all for tonight. Thanks so much for spending your Friday night with me. Now, before you let that head smack down on the pillow, take one last one-eyed scroll through our website, cbc.ca/BC, for more headlines. And I'll be back here, right here, again with you tomorrow night. Stay safe and have a good night.